Hello, I'm Richard from Expedition Tracking, and I'm here today to give you a quick and easy overview of how to use your new tracking system. Hopefully, you'll have received your trackers through the post, and you will also have received an email from us with your login details and a link to reset and set your password. So you're going to go to our administration site, which is the TrackTrail Live sign-in page, and sign in using the credential that you've been given. Once you're logged in, it's nice and straightforward. There are only three menu options at the top. There's orders, events, and trackers. I'm going to take you through each of these, but let's start with trackers first of all. Now, when I click trackers on this page, I'm going to see an awfully large amount because these are a lot of our rental ones as well. So there are a couple of thousand trackers in the list. In this case, you're going to see probably just a few, 3, 4, 5, 10, 20, 30, however many trackers you own. What you can see here is the tracker's username, the tracker's name. At the moment, that may be default or it may be nothing in there. If you were to type in here, for example, group 1 and in here, group 2, these would be saved as the default names, and when you set up an expedition a little bit later, these would be the names that are assigned to those trackers. Now you can of course change them within the event setup, which is very easy to do as well. But if you commonly or very likely will use the same names for every expedition, then you can set them within this page, and every time you view them on the tracking link, when you, for example, click flag number 1, that will be called group 1 or group B, C, or whatever you wish to call it. The only other items of interest in here really are these two buttons. You will see when the tracker was last used and when it's planned to be next used once that data is populated when you start to use the trackers. But the two buttons you're interested in here really are this one, activation, and the restart. When your trackers are shipped to you, they will all be hibernated or deactivated, however you wish to refer to it. And that means they'll only be incurring a minimal charge. Usually when trackers are hibernated, they're only billed at £1 per month. And when they are active, then they are charged at £9.50 per month. That's based on January 2023 prices, assuming you're also using the OS mapping. Now then, if you were to click on this button, it will say click to activate. And when you click that to activate, it will slide across and go green, as you can see highlighted there. And that tracker will be immediately activated. It typically takes about 20 minutes for a tracker to be activated on all of the networks, but essentially it's ready to use. And it will remain active until you come back and choose to deactivate it. So if you wanted to activate it in March and leave it all the way through to July, you would just click that to activate it anytime in March, and then before the end of July, assuming you don't want to use it in August, you must slide this to hibernate it again. It is very important that you hibernate it before the end of the month, because as soon as the first of the month rolls along, the networks will invoice us for the SIM cards and we will onwardly invoice to you. So very important to just make a note in your diary when you want to have your trackers activated and deactivated. For many organizations, it's common not to use them in August, and typically many organizations will deactivate them at the very end of October and then start to turn them on in the early part of the year. So that's how you activate and deactivate your trackers, which is all to do with the billing of them. The other message here is, the other column should I say, there is restart. So if you were out somewhere in the hills and for some reason your tracker hadn't sent an update for a little while, then you can request for it to restart itself by clicking on this little icon there. And if you click on that, it will just send a message to the tracker requesting it to reboot itself. And that's it. The other items in here, this would delete a tracker from your inventory. You don't ever really want to do that, so you don't need to use that button. And this button here gives people the capability to add trackers. Now, we support three types of tracker. We support the LTE or the GSM models, which are little black ones that you may own. And we also support customers who own their own Spot or Garmin trackers. And for customers who own Spot or Garmin trackers, they can click this little button here to add a tracker. They can choose either Spot or Garmin, and they can fill in those details, and they can add their Spot or Garmin devices to our network. And we only charge a small fee of £5 per tracker per month used for those Spot or Garmin trackers, and then their data, location data, can be bought into our ecosystem and viewed on all of our advanced mapping and be used alongside GSM trackers as well. Okay, so that's the trackers page. Fundamentally, most of you, once your trackers are in here, are either just going to be naming them once or twice and then activating and deactivating them on demand, resetting as required. The other two columns, let's first of all take you to orders. Orders is the area where you would place an order for hire, not for creating events for trackers that you own. So let's say, for example, you own 5 trackers, but you've got an expedition coming up where you need 6. So you perhaps want to hire an extra trackers from us. In here, you would either place a new order from this page here, where you would put the event name in, you would put the start and end date in, choose if you want ordnance survey mapping, you would add the quantity of trackers that you need, your delivery options would then be presented to you, and then you submit that. As soon as you submit that, that order would appear on this list of trackers here, this list of orders here. It can be amended and edited if you require to change quantities and things like that. And also, when you place that order, it automatically creates an equivalent event. Now, remember, orders are just if you want to hire a tracker. So you would just use this when you want to top up any existing that you own. For those of you who just own trackers and don't want to do anything else other than create an expedition for your up and coming weekend, that's how it's achieved in here. You'll notice that test order I put in the other page has been reflected as an event in here. Now, I'll show you what you can do in events, but I'm going to create a brand new one for you. So let's say you've got a Duke of Edinburgh expedition coming up on the date coming soon. Let's just refer to it as a bronze expedition. I'm going to give it a unique name. I'm going to call it Bronze in February, and I'm going to choose the date of the 1st of February to the 2nd of February. The start date and time, this is what time the trackers are allowed to appear on your map. Ideally, you don't want your trackers shown earlier or later in case the trackers have been switched on at some point in time and earlier than your start position. In other words, you don't want to show trackers when they're at people's homes and things like that. So you would usually set that, for example, to be 6 o'clock in the morning, 8 o'clock, whatever it may be. The other purpose that the start time serves is it's used as the start or baseline time for any calculations to do with speed, distance and time, but they are things that you'll learn about in the more advanced video, which is separate to this one. Choose your end time, which again, you want it to be a time which is the time which your tracker is going to be ceased using. It might be 8 o'clock at night. By all means, add a little bit of extra time on in case the tracker is overrun. And remember, at any time, even during an expedition, you can edit these times. You can change it to an earlier time or a later time on either of these boxes at any point. Password. Now then, you can, if you wish, set a password to view this expedition. So that means that if you were to share this link with some colleagues, they would have to enter the password that you put in here in order to be able to view that link. That's just an additional safeguarding measure that we've got in there, which is quite common, especially when tracking minors, children. The checkpoint detection radius, you don't need to worry about this. I would suggest leave it as default. What is it for? If you have waypoints or checkpoints, checkpoint 1, meeting point, campsites set up in your tracking map, when the trackers get within this radius, they will log a time in a little table which records the timestamps of when they pass all of the checkpoints. So leave that as default. Next, the available map providers. These are the 4 map types that we support, and assuming you do have the requested the OS maps, that would appear on this list as well. If you haven't requested OS maps or don't pay for OS maps, this would be grayed out and you wouldn't have the option to change that. Now this just says which maps do you want to have available to all of your users. Most commonly on DAV, you will only be often using the Ordnance Survey, perhaps the OpenStreetMap or Mapbox, but most commonly Ordnance Survey is the one you would be using. And in that case, which default map, in other words, when the map screen loads, which map do you want to load first? Very often people would click on Ordnance Survey. You do have the option to change that, of course, and I'll show you how to do that in just 1 minute. But for now, I'm going to leave this as a Ordnance Survey map. Is this event a race? I'm going to leave this set to no. I would advise you do the same. What does that do? When you get within 1 kilometer, or when your trackers get within 1 kilometer of the finish, it will send a message to those trackers to speed up their frequency of transmission to once every 15 seconds. And this is really used by races who want to get a more accurate finish time. If you're doing a DAV or a walk, then it's not applicable, so leave it as default as no. Finally, you've got a couple of items here which are to do with customizing the setup. One of those is emergency SMS contacts. You can put up to 3 mobile telephone numbers in there. If those numbers are not UK numbers, do remember to add the country code prefix. If not, you could add your telephone number in here. This is one of our support numbers, so that's the one you would add there. You'd add your other supervisors here and here. And in the event that anyone pushed the SOS button on the trackers, each one of these telephone numbers would receive an SMS. Okay, next option down. If you were sharing your event, not so applicable to expeditions, but if you were sharing your expedition on social media, then you can choose a custom logo and it would appear with that logo on things like Facebook. But it's not going to be applicable for most of you who are doing this for expedition use. Finally, you just click Create Event. Now, that event has been created. Let me just go back and show you that's there. If I go to forthcoming events, bronze February, there it is. I'm now going to click on edit that, and there it is. So I can amend any of the dates and times if I need to, but you'll notice now some extra options have appeared under here. One of those is to do with adding routes and checkpoints. That is going to be shown to you in a more advanced video, so I'll leave that one alone. Fundamentally, all that does is if you want to import a pre-planned route or a number of routes onto the system, this button will allow you to do that, and you can import GPX files out of things like eDAV or OS Maps Online, but I won't go into the detail of that one on this video. The last thing you need to do to get a expedition all ready and set up is add your trackers to it. So when you go to assign trackers, if you click on this button here, it will ask you which trackers you want. And if your trackers, for example, are numbered 293, 294 and 295, you would just type 293 and choose the tracker from the list. You can use 294 and I've actually picked the same one twice there, 294. And finally, I'm going to click 295. All your trackers are shown in a drop-down list here, so you can't choose any that don't belong to you. You'd only be offered those which are available. And if I click Assign Trackers, you will see this changes to say 3 participants have been registered. I can view those participants by clicking on this little icon here. And there they are, and they've automatically been given the numbers, the names Group 1, Group 2, Group 3, and the flag numbers 1, 2, and 3. You can change those to read something else. For example, you want to go A, B, and C, and that's how they would appear when viewed on the map. These other items here are related to the more advanced features which will be shown to you in a later video, but they are absolutely not required as default. So just as a recap, if you wanted to create an event from scratch, you click on the little plus button, put a name, start date and end time, password if required, and then you would click Create Event. Once the event has been created, you would go back to this page here and finally assign your trackers to it. So you edit your event and you edit your event from there. Just choose forthcoming event. You edit your event from this one. Go down assign your trackers, type in the 3 digits or the 4 digits of your tracker number, tab into the next box and assign them all to it. You can optionally rename them, but if that's all you want to do, then you are done. Now let's have a look at that expedition. You can view your expedition by either clicking on this little icon here, which will open it. There's another way to do it as well. So on your events list, you can view your current events, forthcoming events, past events, or all of them. So if I go for forthcoming again, Bronze February is there. You can click on that to view it. If you want to share your link with other people, when you click on this, a pop-up will bring up saying how do you want to share it. You can share it via Microsoft Teams, via mail, and if you're on a mobile phone, you'll get options like sharing it via WhatsApp and things like that as well. So it's contextual. Whichever device you share it on, it will give you options. It's most common to share it via WhatsApp, email, and those are the two most useful ones. Once you've shared that link, they will all receive an email which tells them to click on a little link, which is the equivalent of clicking on this button here. And this will take you and open, let me go into the bronze one, Bronze February. Now, if you've not added any routes, which is covered in that more advanced video, then you will appear on this map here. So the date and time is the 1st of February at 5 AM till the 2nd, 23:59. The trackers, as mentioned, don't appear until that time and they disappear after that time. At the moment, this is just a blank map, but when the trackers first get turned on, the map would immediately zoom in to their location and you would see them on the map. Now, I mentioned those map types. This is defaulted to a flavour of Ordnance Survey. It's most likely you want to have OS leisure maps on there, which you're probably familiar with. So if I zoom into OS, as you see, it rolls in through the layers, 1 in 50 and finally 1 in 25,000 scale here. Your participants, there we go. We named them Group A, Group B and Group C. And that is that's more or less all you need to see on this video. We've got a video to do with the more advanced features and routing, and a video which also gives you an introduction to how to use the trackers in general. And there's a link in our initial email which shows a PDF which you can download with all those details in there too. So I hope you found this useful. If you've got any questions, by all means, please come back to me. Thank you.